We are 4:30. We can
Yeah, I know, pretty good.
All right, we will call this meeting of the Eufaula Planning Commission to order. May we have roll call?
Mr. Dixon, Ms. Harris. Here. Mr. Savage,
Here.
Mr. Green,
Here.
Mr. Motley, Mr. McKenzie,
Here.
Mr. Cobb,
Here.
Chief Holmes, Mayor Tibbs.
Here.
All right, everybody's been given a copy of the minutes from the last meeting, had a chance to look at it. There's no questions or comments or corrections. Is there a motion to approve as submitted?
So moved.
Second.
There's Mr. Dixon.
Yes, here.
I'll slip behind you.
No, I want you in front of me.
That's a good one.
All right,
That was a good one.
you want
Be
the
voice vote. Voice vote for the.
voice vote for the, all in favor? Aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Any communication from city council?
No.
Okay, hearing of applications. First application is applicant Don and D. Kellogg requested minor subdivision to re-subdivide property located on the southeast corner of Orange Avenue and Britt Place. Is there anybody here to speak on behalf of this request? You just stand up, state your name, and just kind of tell us what's going on.
Yeah, I'm Don Kellogg, and you know my wife is Dee. We own the property, it has Superior Pecan, and it's a area in the front where we have the retail and the big building in the back, and then behind that is a big vacant area which is wooded. It's not been used for anything, and what we'd like to do is divide that off, and then we'd be able to maybe build a small cottage back there a little later on, not right away, but later on. And it's a very deep lot, so it will go back and set the house back a little further. That's what we'd like to do.
This is orange.
Because right now, the whole neighborhood, except that one building which was built in 1896, which is zoned M1, but the rest of the area has residential, so we think it would fit in quite nicely.
Okay. All right, everybody understand what's going on? Any questions?
Yes, behind the house, you know, you got that big ditch back there, you know, where your place at, right?
Yeah, it goes real deep, and then it goes back to the creek back
Yeah, I
there.
understand. How far your place would run into the creek back there?
Oh, it's quite a ways back to get to the creek. Yeah, we'd probably set the house back maybe, 35, 40 feet, something like that, way back, off the roadway there a little bit. Like to kind of keep the trees and make it look nice and nestle it back into the area and make it a nice look.
Well, they having, the crew in here have seen that, you know, the creek runs straight behind that. Have the crew in there check that out before we can get them a building permit.
Well, they're right off of the lot line there in the property that's. He's got, I think, 50 feet.
I have a couple of plats if you'd like. Mr.
Yeah, I know, you know, this asking a question. Right behind, you know, you got a drop, and then you come back through down this section is where they would interfere with the code engineer.
Well, we typically send those lots, I mean, these plats that have any adjoining property to the Corps for comment, but we did not receive any comments from them. But we can verify with them that they don't have any issues with it.
You think it'd be all right to approve it and
And when they come in for a building permit,
Is this?
I mean, typically on a survey that would reflect because the Corps has flowage easement. And so typically on the survey, it would reflect the flowage easement if there was one that was all the way up to, where it is.
But that's not core property back there, is it?
No,
red-
It doesn't
there's no red line on
butt
your
up to the
property,
water.
is
No, we actually go back to the center of the creek.
Right, and then the building setback drawn here is 40 feet off the center of the creek.
And I think on the plat that he drew, you see where it starts to drop off way back here where it's a diagonal drop off down there, so there's a large building area right up front here. It actually It actually goes along and just slopes gently and
Right.
then will drop
Drop
off into
down.
the creek eventually, yeah.
Okay.
Again, when they come in for a building permit, they're required to show silt fences and any kind of other mechanisms to.
I have no problem, I just want, just
Okay.
Okay, any other questions, comments from the commission?
Houses all on that Britt place. I mean, there's more homes on that, on Britt Place, that
Yeah, there's homes.
several
all
more
the way.
homes right there.
And down at the end, a person from Florida bought those two houses on the end, and it actually you can walk right back to the trail there. It's just
Oh, yeah.
about 75 yards maybe back to the
Right,
trail.
okay.
Nice area.
I'll make a move to approve.
All right, let's see if they have any questions or comments from the audience. All right, is there a motion then?
Make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Ms. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Savage?
Yes.
Mr. Green?
Yes.
Mr. McKenzie?
Yes.
Mr. Cobb?
Yes.
Mayor Fields?
Yes.
All right, it's approved. Next item, public hearing, amendment to the zoning ordinance. We've got two items. First one, section 6.631, exception in order to allow administrative review and approval of buffer exceptions. So I guess we'll take these one at a time and vote on them one at a time. So first one, if you would Sherry explain to us what we're looking at, and we will then discuss it.
All right, I'm going to go over this just briefly. I think we've all been versed on what the intent was on this exception. It was to streamline a process for developers, applicants to go through an administrative body to have an exception as opposed to going to the Board of Zoning Adjustment. We saw this as kind of like a extra step that could be taken on administratively. So obviously we took this to the Planning Commission. Planning Commission did not have any issues with it. We had a work session with the City Council. City Council made a couple of suggestions which have been incorporated into this. So we've brought it back before you for a public hearing. So I'm going to read what the proposed ordinance states, and then I will allow for further discussion. 6.631 exception. In the case of existing development or any non-conforming lot where the provision of the 30-foot screen buffer precludes the reasonable use of the property upon approval of the zoning administrator and the mayor, a wall or fence of at least 6 feet high supplemented by vegetative screening may be substituted. Plans for the design and construction of such a wall or fence must be constructed along the designated property line and maintained in good condition. With that being said, the changes to it were to, again, remove the Board of Zoning Adjustment requirement, the addition of supplemented by vegetative screening, and to delete the portion in no case where the buffer be less than 15 feet in width.
And the only difference from the last time we discussed this is adding the mayor.
A second body being the
Adding
mayor.
the second,
Sign
okay, we
off on
discussed
the
this
plans.
before, but the difference now is we've added the second person in the office in City Hall, and that would be the mayor. Approve it also.
And just so that y'all know, there is an appeal process. You know, under our zoning ordinances, under 8.511, if for whatever reason someone has disagrees with a determination that's made by an official, like the zoning administrator, then they can appeal that process to the BZA. We just recently had one where there was a determination made. And so in that instance, there is an appeal process already set up. If for whatever reason someone feels like they've been harmed by a denial, then they can go before the BZA. So this isn't the final word. If for whatever reason somebody feels like either the zoning administrator, the mayor, you know, couldn't agree, and for whatever reason they they can still go before the BZA but it would be an appeal versus they automatically have to go to the BZA first.
Okay, so the administrative can deny it also?
Right.
Okay.
Right. Well, if for whatever reason they can grant it upon the approval.
Right,
And so if
and
they
then
don't get
it goes
approved
on.
by, like
Then they
for
can
instance, if there's
go
a
to the
disagreement
BZA.
between, because now you have two people.
Right.
And if the zoning administrator says that they want it and the mayor says they don't, then there's not an approval, and then that person could go
To the
to
BZA.
appeal that denial of the buffer exception.
Okay.
And so,
then it would follow the path that it has been following after that.
right. Right. But, yes, okay. But an appeal, basically to reverse a decision would require 4 affirmative votes by the BZA.
And,
Well,
we're
how
going
many
to-
does it take now?
Well,
I'm sorry,
How many does it take now
to
to
reverse?
approve it?
To approve?
Or to approve a variant.
To approve a variance, we just established quorum, typically 4, yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's still 4.
Before,
So now it won't take two.
No,
Well,
it's
yeah,
still-
if they
It's going
agree,
back.
then it would just be the two of them
Yeah,
would agree,
if-
and then
if everybody's
you don't have to
in
go.
agreement.
You don't have to wait to be on an agenda.
And staff is going to work on a process where we can send notification to our parties immediately surrounding if we need to, and to make sure that everyone knows that this is actually.
Okay. Other questions or comments from the commission? All right, we'll open it up for any questions or comments from the audience.
I'd like to say something if I'm
All
allowed.
right, please stand and state your name and then.
My name is Harry Perkins. I want a couple of minutes, if you'll allow me, cut me off, tell me no if I don't. First, that's the zone orders on paper and stuff. First thing, I'll say, if you do approve this, this is only an authority to say no to business. This does not say yes to business. The only thing, the decision that would come up would be a no. Let's see,
Well,
I feel like-
I'm not following what
I
you're
mean-
saying.
I mean, when they go to the city and ask, I'd like to do this, and they say yes, that's the end of it, that's fine.
Yeah.
The only thing the city can say is no. So I'm asking, I don't want my mayor saying no to business, how about the building inspector? If you get someone more hands-on, who's more use of doing this and dealing with it, I think the building inspector would be more appropriate than my mayor. I don't want him saying no to business. It's just my opinion. That's if you say yes. 2,
can I make a comment?
Just-
yeah, if you don't take off my time,
The current mayor would not say no to business.
my point. All right, 2, but the building inspector's hands-on, he's out there measuring the fence, he's out there where they're building, I think it'll be more appropriate for that. If you say yes, I'm against it, but for other reasons. 2, when you look at this, it's gonna change by the time it gets to the paper. They're gonna turn around and put it's gonna override, what do you call that clause at the end?
The repealing clause, that's
The
standard
repealing-
language.
Oh, it's standard language. Do you know what this repeals? 4.1 for one. No one's ever told anybody about that. It's gonna repeal anything that interferes with it. And I call it the Henry Franklin ordinance. So anything that he would have had, that would have been cut off right then and there. So I'm just saying, it's gonna repeal some things. If you read that, you'll find out what it repeals. And, why can't you have an exact copy of what's gonna be put in the paper and what's gonna be approved? I don't know why, but it's not in here. It's gonna be different in the paper. It was different last time. What you approved and what was in the paper is 2 different things. That's all that. Okay, last thing, the more, can I use the rest of my time on another issue? That's before this board?
Well, maybe when we get to another issue. Now, we're just taking comments right now on this ordinance change.
Fair enough. That's what I have to say. If you would like any of the records that I have, I'll be glad to provide you any of the records I have. Sure.
Okay, the only language change that will be made to the ordinance, just make sure we're straight. What we have in front of us, what is stricken out will be taken out. What is underlined will be added, and there are no other changes to the ordinance.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. And this information was brought up before, and I myself went through and compared what the notice in the paper stated and what was written, and I did not see what variation that Mr.
There's
Perkins was referring to.
There's a newspaper. There's a copy of what you approved.
What's there, what's there is not anything that's changed. It's just,
This is not the same.
well, this is not the entire ordinance. This is not the entire ordinance.
But why
This
can't
is
you
the
put
part
what's
that's
there,
changing.
what y'all are voting on?
What we're voting on is what is changed in the ordinance. That's what we've got in front of us, is the change. Okay, it is just the change. There's nothing else going to change about the ordinance other than that one paragraph.
What is all gonna be repealed?
Only the language that
Only
is
the language
reflecting of
that's
that
there.
section.
What the other language that you're referring to is already in the ordinance.
Yes.
Okay, it's already there. We're not adding that. It may show up in the paper, but it's already there. They may write more of the text of the ordinance that is already there. But this is the only language that is being changed. We're not adding, like I said, this ordinance goes on, and the paper may choose to publish that part of it, but it's already there, regardless of what we
I understand
do.
the dot things. I do understand. I
Right.
made my concern on the record.
Right,
And I'll,
okay,
I'll
we
let it
appreciate
stand
it.
as that.
My understanding, the intent is just because it's considered to be a minor exception that would not need to go to the BZA. Okay. All right, any other comments?
And the only thing I just want to clarify, something that he said, what he's talking about is the notice is sent, and the paper publishes it just as it's sent from the city.
Why can't you vote on it
And
say
what it is the change that's reflected here, but in the body down at the bottom is the common verbiage that's added. The provisions of this ordinance shall be are severable. If any part of the ordinance is declared invalid or unconstitutional, such declaration shall not affect the part which remains. All ordinances or parts thereof which conflict with this ordinance are hereby repealed. This ordinance shall become effective immediately upon its passage and approval by the mayor or otherwise becoming a law. And then adopted and approved, and this is for what will be presented to the city council as part of the resolution. What the planning commission makes a recommendation on, that is what the resolution will look like that comes before the city council.
Okay.
If there's a recommendation made by the planning commission. The planning commission is making a recommendation based on the changes that are presented, which is right here. And so, either is going to make a recommendation to approve it or a recommendation not to.
Okay,
Or not
so
make a
I think then his question would be, or my question, based on his comment, is does this conflict with other parts of the ordinance and therefore repeal those other parts? Are there any other parts of the ordinance we're aware of that this conflicts with and therefore it would repeal? Because that's what that's saying, right?
Right.
Are there any other parts of the ordinance that these changes, not the rest of it, just the changes make? Because what's already there is there. We're not changing that.
Right.
In the years that I have been enforcing and administrating this ordinance, I don't recall anything that would affect that.
Okay.
Right, he's saying it's 4.1.
Okay, because I think that's,
Yeah, I'm looking.
4.1 is right here.
I'm looking at 4. I'm looking for
We need to
4.1.
change to the intent.
Yeah, 4.1 is just about the continuance of non-conformant uses. Is that what you're talking about?
Sure.
Okay.
And buffers. The buffers. That's just one thing.
Well, we're looking to see if there is a conflict. I mean, you're right. If there is a
Is there
conflict,
any others? Anybody look?
No, I don't know of any conflicts. I mean, this is the only section that talks about buffer exceptions specifically. So,
I just found that one right from reading, because it's a current event.
all right, any other comments? Now, do we have to have two, or just we vote on it today? Do we have to have two hearings?
no, that second hearing would be before the city council, correct?
You're just, vote to recommend.
Okay, so today we vote to recommend it
There are
if
no
there's a
other-
motion.
If you're not requesting any additional changes based on public comment.
Okay, all right. If there's no other comments, is there a motion?
How much motion we recommend it?
I'll second.
Ms. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Dixon?
I'm gonna abstain. I don't know enough about this to vote at this point. I'm gonna abstain.
Mr. Savage?
Yes.
Mr. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Motley? Mr. McKenzie?
Yes.
Mr. Cobb?
Yes.
Mayor Tibbs?
Yes.
Okay. And that was enough, right? All right, so that goes then now to city council, and they will hear it also and make the final determination, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Sherry, this process should speed up a business situation.
That's the intent, is to make it easier.
Save up to
That's
Easier and faster.
Not make it harder for a business.
Yeah, the intent is to make it
up.
easier for people.
But this only gives you permission to say no. If you say yes, it just goes right on through. There's no question. You just
Well,
ask them
it-
to do something, they say yes, you don't say, oh, I want to feel that.
If you say no, then it basically just follows what we're doing today.
Yeah.
So it doesn't really, I mean, you can still have that same process that you have today. It doesn't take that away.
Thank you for listening.
It just speeds up the process.
Yeah, we've had an incident with a new business here where it actually held them up, waiting on, the process. And we could have simply done it and had them moving a lot faster and helping that business expedite getting up and running.
Or you can completely stop them.
We could. There would probably be some circumstances where that would.
No, the mayor and the and Sherry couldn't stop it. They can say no, but then it's just like if this wasn't passed today, and they said no, it would just go right on to the zoning commission, just like
It
always.
always does, yeah. Yeah, there'd be a broader look at it at that point.
I've been there.
Yeah, I can't think of
They just keep you from having to go
very
there.
few examples where there would be a no.
Yeah, fair enough.
Okay? The next item is on an ordinance, use 5.283, use is permitted on appeal in order to allow funeral homes. Would you like to explain that one to us?
I'd love to. We've had a request to have the use of a funeral home allowed as a permitted by appeal use in C1 district. Upon that request, I did some research and found that there were several localities that allowed it by right, and there were also several localities that allowed it by appeal. I felt, staff felt, the city felt that in many instances it might not necessarily work in every case, and the appeal process would give a blanket of protection for neighboring use. These uses aren't typically that intensive. Some can be, and I believe in this particular case, the most problematic things that we might have to deal with are the traffic and the parking issues. So the way it would work now is if you did approve this or did recommend this to to the city council, and it was approved by city council, any particular funeral home that wanted to come into a C1 zoning district would have to apply to the BZA to allow the use. During that process is when the BZA reviews these particulars like traffic and access to the site. This ordinance only gives that appeal process. You are not approving a funeral home to go into the district. It would have one more step in the process to be allowed.
Would it cost more?
As far as the application to the BZA, yes, there's an application fee that's involved. That's currently $50.
So the next step, go to the zoning board,
Yes,
they would give a final approval.
correct.
So it will not be permitted in C2? Is that what I'm looking at?
No, it would remain in C2. It would be, I mean, what happens
Use
is
is
when.
permitted is taken out of.
Correct, because in C2, you have an ordinance language where it states anything that's allowed by appeal. The way it's written
Oh, okay.
is automatically allowed in C2.
All right. Any questions?
I don't know where C1 is.
C1 districts, we have two. One is where the hospital is, the nursing home, the water, that area, the school. And the case that is the subject of what's going to be the request is that piece that sits across from the school in the corner there. I believe it was a hospice at one time. Funeral homes are typical institutional type use in this kinds of, it's a neighborhood commercial district. The other pocket of C1 that we have is over here on the river, on Riverside, where you have a couple of doctor's offices and CPA firm.
So basically, a funeral home, if they were allowed, could operate right there at the hospital across from the Crown Healthcare.
Feasibly, or
If they appeal, it has to go through an appeal process to be permitted.
if the Board of Zoning Adjustment allows it, yes.
Right. It's not automatic. It's got to go through BZA.
I recommend we don't change anything.
Seems to make good business sense when you think about it.
Yeah, but you got to think about the neighbors too. I mean, I don't
Yes,
know.
you do.
It's just my recommendation.
You already got 6 cups in there, I'm gonna have some more. Too much stuff.
And in the process of opening up a funeral home right across from it.
Yeah, we'll open up for comments in just a minute. Let's make sure we finish up here, and we'll get y'all's comments in just a minute. What's the process now for putting a funeral home in C1?
You can't.
It's
Yeah,
not
Just-
allowed.
that's what
just
we're
not allowed.
voting to recommend.
Okay, so this would be on appeal, you would allow it. The BZA approves it. Right now, in C1, it's not allowed.
Right, it would be a case-by-case analysis on appeal.
Right.
Application by application analysis. Right now, if you want to put a funeral home in a C1, you can't because it's not allowed. It's not a use that's permitted. It's not a
Okay.
permitted use.
And what, do we
Either
know
by
what,
right or
do we know
by
what other
appeal.
municipalities do, how they handle it?
I have a chart on your staff report. The list of districts that allow it by right are, again, the districts are not necessarily the same
They're not?
name. They're not, well, they're the same intent. They might not call it the same. We're looking at neighborhood commercial type, which is what our C1 is. Florence allows by right, Phoenix City, Opelika, and Foley. And then we have localities that are by appeal, which is Athens, Auburn, Madison, and Montevallo. And their appeal process is very similar. It would go to the Board of Zoning Adjustment.
So what Florence is calling B2, it's our C1, basically.
Yes.
Okay. And did you find any that do not allow it like we currently do?
I'm sure there were some that I don't have that in front of me at the moment.
Okay, any other questions or comments from the commission? All right, now we will open it up for comments from the audience. Who would like to go first? If you would like to, please stand, state your name. And
My name is Marie Rogers. My property that I've owned since the Civil War, I think, is located right next to, not really since the Civil War, but I've been there 30-something years. Is located right next to where this mortuary wants to be established, where hospice used to be. I really, I know that it's, I know there are exceptions in other towns where it's not allowed, and I think that this should be one of the exceptions. I don't want to live next to a mortuary. Number one, I don't want to live next to a mortuary. I'm sorry, but there are other places in town, and I wish them well. They'll always have business. There's no doubt about that. But I don't want to, my dog and I don't want to live next door to a mortuary. There was not a mortuary there when I moved there 30-something years ago, and I don't want to live next to a mortuary. Secondly, the school. I have enough, there's enough problem, with the school traffic. When I'm trying to go to work at 3:45 in the afternoon, and yes, I know I'm old and I still work. Sometimes the traffic is there's still traffic going on. The school traffic, and the school I have no objection to because I taught school for 25 years. So, I know it's something I have to live with, but there's also a hospital there, there's Crown Health, there are ambulances that are on a regular basis that need to go through. I believe there are 30 parking places on that lot where they want to locate the mortuary. And I think I counted correctly. I believe there are 30. And anybody else would have to park on the street, at the water board, in front of the school. If the school had a function going on, that would be a conflict. They certainly cannot park in my driveway under any circumstances. My sympathies for whoever the families are, but my driveway won't be used for parking for the funeral home. I don't think that, I just really don't think that you got both sides of the street lined with cars, and I don't think that would work. And also, there are constantly ambulances going over to Crown. The traffic is bad enough, and that is no human, that's not because of human error. It just so happens that the school has been located there a long, long time. And I know because I've lived here for 66 years. So I know the school has been there a long time. But there are lots, it's expanded, there are a lot more children, there's a lot more traffic. There's a lot of traffic, hospital traffic. There's a lot of traffic at Crown, and it will be quite confusing. And besides the fact that I personally don't want to live next door to a mortuary, the traffic situation is my main objective. It's just not the right location. There's just too much traffic there.
Okay.
Hey, how y'all doing?
Good.
I'm John Grubbs, and I own a funeral home here in Eufaula. And out of the 16 years that I've been
in the mortuary business. What she was just explaining about the C1 and the C2, their stipulations set for that particular reason. Here in the state of Alabama, a couple of our state laws that we are governed by the governor of the state of Alabama. We have to have an exhaust system in our, what we call our prep room, that filters out to the outside. There's no kind of ventilation system, et cetera, et cetera. All of this stuff goes to the outside. We have to put that in because that is a state law. So, God forbid, say for instance you pick up a decomp case. You don't never know what your call or your discretion may be. So if you got a decomp case and all of the procedures that we have to go through and dealing with the cases that we may come in contact with, when you turn that exhaust fan on, you have no other choice but to turn it on. Sometimes you have to leave it running for 24 hours or more. All of that goes to the outside. And just like she was just stating, that is, for one, that's a hazard to the public when you have a housing community in that area. Now, at the end of the day, there's 4 or 5 funeral homes here in Eufaula. And if you look at each one of these funeral homes and where we're located, we're well off and around a housing complex or a community to where that stuff would take place. And I am with her on that. There's too much traffic there. For one, I got kids go to that school. I got one daughter just went up to the school up by Forest Hill area. I think that Eufaula primary area. Whatever. I got a daughter there, and my baby girl goes to that school. I had a chance and opportunity to sit down with the superintendent last week. I spoke with him about it. From his conversation and my conversation, he's not informed of a funeral home. I spoke with the chief on the fire department. He's not in favor of a funeral home going there. But I know that this is a process that it has to go through. It has to go through you guys, go through zoning or whomever, or whatever it may have to do. But if you allow a funeral home to go in a C1 district where it does not allow us to go, and at the end of the day, I looked at that building when I first opened up, and I was told that, so I left it alone. There are several other properties here in Eufaula that is well out of the way, that's zoned in the commercial district that we are allowed to go in. And I don't think Eufaula needs to change that or amend that rule and leave it as is, because of the hazards and the potentials that it presents, not only to just the traffic, but the chemicals and stuff that we have to use. I mean, if you're using chemicals that are cancer hazardous, would you want to walk out your back door and smell these chemicals? No one would. And if she's going to be living next door to it, it poses a risk. It poses a risk. Just like, you know, if we use cigarettes, it poses a risk. And if you come in contact with that, it poses a risk to your health as well. And please, don't put that around those children. Those children do not need to see that with the age that they are, and they come out and come home and say, well, Nana, guess what I seen? I seen a body being unloaded. Or whatever you're doing. When you pull out of that driveway with that hearse, when you pull out of that driveway with a first call van, anything you may have, somebody's child is going to see that. And I don't think it needs to be rezoned. It needs to stay as the C1 and keep the stipulations with us in what we have in place. Thank you.
May I say something? Sir?
Yes, state your name, please.
I'm Robert Franklin. I'm the guy that wants to put my funeral home there. A couple of things on. First, I'm going to address what Mr. Grove said about the kids. The kids will not see nobody unloaded or unloaded. Prime example, yesterday, Wednesday, I picked the bottle at the nursing home, right across from the kids' playground. When I bagged out of it, they could see everything. No one paid attention. Number 2, as the exhaust system and all that go, OSHA requirements, if you, embalming chemical are only dangerous in an enclosed area. That's why we are required to have the exhaust system. If you're operating on a 7.75 part per million on the inside, that's safe. Every time we get a level of that chemical, it's 0.35, 0.40, real safe. Once it hit the air, it's gone. So I would be more concerned when hospitals were there, when they treat stuff with terminal illness like hepatitis, AIDS, tuberculosis. Tuberculosis is airborne. That's real dangerous. If one of their patients went in, coughed, it's in the air. airborne. What embalming does, we set, number one is sanitation. Anything coming there with a infectious disease, anything dangerous, I kill it. Once it get in my possession, when I start my process, I kill it. Traffic. Most of my funerals are on Saturdays. They're at a church. Unless I got a professional football player or an actor or somebody real famous there, there's not going to be no whole lot of traffic there. Matter of fact, it's going to be like it is now. You're not going to even know I'm there. And I've got the school calendar. If anything present, I'm not going to do anything concerning the school schedule. From 9, whatever school hours are, they're out of school mostly about 3:30. And on the weekdays, the school finna be out during the summer. So I got a list of, I went neighbors. I don't know about her, she didn't answer the door. But behind all the neighbors, I got over 100 people that signed this that is in favor of me putting my business there. And it's not going to affect no traffic. It's not going to affect the kids. And Mr. Grubb don't even live in Eufaula. So why he more concerned about me moving my funeral home over there? And if you look at Stanford, funeral home next door to Stanford, funeral home even in his front door. Central funeral home. Thank Luke, you stay across the street from there. Funeral home next door to there. So it's houses all over the place of where funeral homes are. So it's not going to be no disrupt to the community whatsoever. Matter of fact, it's going to help the community. Like getting there, I can grow. Create not a whole lot of more jobs, at least 3 or 4 more jobs, but somebody that's out there doesn't have a job. And it's not for me, it's for the people that I serve. That's the last time you honor your loved one. And my persona and statement, when you honor your loved one, I want the best facility, the best everything. Where I am now, there's no parking. On that hill, it's hard to get in and out, especially when the pilgrims in town. We can't even get in and out of there on a Saturday morning when our funerals are. But most of our funerals are on Saturdays. There's not going to be no whole bunch of cars over there at one time. Even if 100 people come by the funeral home to view a body, they're not all coming at one time. One might come this morning, all throughout the day. Maybe 100 people may come. But I got 30 parks there now and room for 5 more. So it's not going to be any harm to the community whatsoever.
Thank you.
I would like to address
hang on.
one issue.
Yes, you got 2 minutes. Go ahead.
Okay, when going back to this OSHA, when he said airborne, okay, in the prep room, once we have a deceased in the prep room, a family has a right to, for one, embalm or non-embalm. And if you got a family there with hepatitis, et cetera, we have to suit up from head to toe. We have to put on masks to work in these prep rooms to do what we do. And if a family say, I don't want Jane Doe embalmed, and Jane Doe has hepatitis or whatever that may be airborne, how are you going to control it then? Yes, OSHA require us to have it in sealed and stilled and closed in prep room, but there's always room for leakage, and my main concern is the children. My children that goes to that school. Yes, I reside in Dothan, Alabama, but I also have a residence here in Eufaula as well. And my main concern is my children that goes to that school. And at the end of the day, OSHA, you cannot tell a family that they cannot be embalmed or not be embalmed. And anybody that's here has been to a funeral or a wake or a visitation. There will always be more than 30 people at a visitation of a well-known person or a not well-known person. I've been doing it for 16 years. Stanford has been here for 30. Chapman has been here for 100. And anytime that Chapman has a visitation going on, you see his parking lot is full. So it poses the concern of the traffic, and my main concern is Monday through Friday, where my child goes to school there.
Yes. 2 minutes, please.
I won't take 2 minutes. In the first place, when hospice was located there, and I live right next door to it. I know I used hospice services when my husband was dying with brain cancer. There are no patients going in. There were no patients going into that building. There were family members, but they did not have patients. They had drugs. but the police patrolled that area so well, I felt safer than anybody in town. But there were no patients with HEP, AIDS, or anything going in that hospice building when the hospice building was located there. The hospice people were like my husband. They were in my house in his hospital bed. He wasn't able to go to hospice. It's not a hospice care facility. It was not a care facility. It was an office building. Simply, merely an office building.
Okay.
And I feel the same way he does about the children. That really bothers me. And you know, I've been seeing those children walk by my house for 30-something years, and that does bother me.
All right, thank you.
One more, you let,
2 minutes, please.
well, I ain't gonna take less than that. If you go inside the building, there's a washroom there that they wash the patients down. They bring them in the back door, there's a washroom there that has the drain in the floor. So when the hospital take on a patient, they come in and wash it down, kind of like a hose down. And like I said, the school, 500, way more, the school is on the side street. Nobody, if you go stand in the school yard, you can't even see the building. So it's not gonna affect the kids, it's not gonna affect the neighbors, it's not gonna affect anybody. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you. Yes, sir.
Ron Cassidy, I've got some real concerns. The thing about this lady, she's a friend of mine. She bought a house 30 years ago, has a deed to it, made payments on it for 30 years. And now she's being told that the district she's in is going to be changed to something else, which affects the value of her property, affects her living conditions. That's not part of her deed. You're taking away her right. She has a right to be concerned, and you have a right to protect her right. This gentleman, I don't mind him having a funeral home here in Eufaula. I'm just saying we don't need to change people's rights in order to get it. And we're saying we're going to put it in every single one, not just this one, but every one. Are we out of land? Is this city out of land and we're in this shape? No. You know it and I know it. It's time to back up, take a look at reality, and say we're going to protect that deed that she has to that property and what's around it.
All right, just so everybody understands where we are today and what we're really considering today. Today we're considering a change to the ordinance. We're not considering a specific funeral home or a specific piece of property. What we're considering right now may affect a specific piece of property in the future, but today we are considering a change to the ordinance that would allow funeral homes on an appeal process to be approved in C1. It does not mean we are approving anybody for anything. That's where we are. Now, yes, granted, it could change something down the road. And even today, if this commission approves it, it still has to go before city council before it becomes a change to the ordinance. And then if it becomes a change to the ordinance, anybody that wants to put a funeral home has to go through the entire approval process, including going to the BZA for an appeal on appeal as an exception to put it in a C1. It's not automatically granted in C1. It has to go through BZA. Yes, sir.
Mr. Savage, one point that I would make, not a true statement. The gentleman just announced the purpose of this ordinance change. It is announced here. So you are dealing with it, and you can't get away from this responsibility.
As chairman of the commission, I'm announcing that what we are deciding today is a change to the ordinance. Yes, I understand. It will have effects on specific pieces of property. We're not considering that today. We're considering this change. Now, yes, we are to fully understand what it may mean in the future for specific pieces of property. But this is what's before us today, is this ordinance change. Yes, sir.
I'd like to make a motion. I've been to a funeral at Mr. Franklin's funeral home. He does a great job. A friend of mine passed away, and I was in attendance to his funeral. I have no issues with him or his right to put a funeral home anywhere he wants, other than I don't agree with changing. I just personally don't agree with changing the district. We had districts set up for a reason. So I would make a motion we do not make a change. Thanks.
Yeah, that you don't recommend
Right.
sending this
Further-
to the city council.
We have these districts set up.
You make a recommendation, right?
All right, so there's a
You
motion.
make a recommendation that they don't
There's
approve.
a motion to deny this change, basically, right? That's the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Ms. Harris?
Nay. In other words, I'm not agreeing with the motion.
Mr.
Can I
Green?
ask a
Wait a
question?
minute,
Is this
Joe,
gonna,
are you saying you want it passed or you don't?
Yes, a nay vote means that
You would recommend it.
she would recommend it, but that's, we don't have the recommendation in front of us.
That's right.
But a nay vote would mean that she's not agreeing that it should be,
Like
Deny.
as is.
right, it should be
The
denied,
nay vote is for a change.
basically, yes. Okay.
Mr. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Cobbs?
Nay.
He said nay.
Mayor Tibbs?
nay.
Mr. McKenzie?
Yes.
Mr. Savage?
Nay.
And I'm officially a yes.
Mr. Dixon?
All right. Did my best.
What's that count?
We have 3 yeses and 4 noes.
I'd like for the record to, can I ask it why we want to push this on and change this? I mean, if anybody that voted no has a funeral home going by them at their residence, would they be happy with this?
Well, staff brought it to the planning commission on behalf of the applicant requesting the change.
I understand what staff did, but staff's not living next to one either. I mean, I'm not trying to be smart about it, but, I heard her appeal and.
Can I change my vote? I misunderstood what you said, that's why I said nay.
Ms. Harris, would you, if you were in her position, I don't want to live next to a funeral home. Do you? And I have nothing against Mr. Franklin. He runs a good business.
I don't have a problem with that.
Okay. Well,
My nay.
nobody puts one next to your house then.
I think when you buy a house under one set of circumstances and you buy it.
I misspoke.
I think it's
what
hard,
are
we
you
shouldn't
thinking,
lightly
Mr.
change those circumstances.
I don't want to change it.
We want to leave it the way it is.
And that's why we have districts set up. So we start variance in this and variance in that.
So
might as well
4
throw it out the window.
yeses and 3 nays.
So you're saying yes. Can he legally change, or do we have to re-vote?
Probably re-vote.
Yeah, that motion was denied, so if can we
Well, I mean, what
Issue
you
a
would do is
motion?
you would reconsider, do a motion to reconsider before the minutes are approved at the next meeting, or what you can do is now you can submit, you voted against the recommendation, you can submit a motion
got
to make
another-
the
to
recommendation.
make the
I got
recommendation,
another-
then you can vote it in or vote it out, okay.
I got another question.
But no, I
What
don't
other
think so.
businesses will this affect in C1?
It won't affect any
No,
other business.
If there's-
This is
funeral
just
home.
specifically funeral homes.
Okay.
I can push, it would recommend to the staff to accept, right? On the thing, it would recommend to the staff to accept it. Well, who was the staff that make the recommendation?
Staff is the city.
I'm saying, I know the city, but who was it to make that recommendation to us change it?
Oh, Mr. Franklin. not Mr. Franklin. Yes, Robert Franklin is the applicant that wanted to have the change. Is that what you're asking?
No, on the,
He brought it to
Brought
the,
it to who did he bring it to?
on
to
the,
Sherry.
To Sherry.
on the staff, it recommend to approve.
Yes,
That's right.
correct.
That means
Okay.
the people in the office that reviewed it.
Okay, so who reviewed, this is what I'm asking the question to, recommend us to accept.
Sherry.
Sherry and her staff.
Yes.
Who else was on that staff?
Me and Courtney and do the research that we did.
Okay.
Okay,
I mean,
so,
You can vote yes.
yeah, I mean, it's not, when she makes the staff analysis and the staff recommendations, that's Sherry and her staff.
I'm saying,
Right.
was it one individual, two individuals that made this decision to accept it, the recommendation to approve?
Mine. It was
your
mine,
individual?
yes.
Okay.
I'd like to make an emotion that we leave it like it is.
but that was basically what we just voted on.
Well, how do I change it?
Well, this is how I think we have to do it. We have to see if there's a recommendation to change it and then vote on that or vote that down. Does that make sense?
Okay, well, I make a recommendation that we don't change it.
Well, that's
No.
basically what we just
That's what
voted
y'all
on.
just voted on.
So I'm going to see if there is a recommendation to accept the change. Is there a motion to accept the change?
I would move that we accept the change.
All right.
So we gotta vote that down.
Is there a second?
Yeah, no. Go ahead.
Are we legally okay?
Yeah, I mean, basically, you've had a matter that's come before you that has already been voted on. Now, the mayor wants to change his vote on it, correct?
Yeah, I was just confused.
And
It
then he
wasn't
was just
changed.
confused.
He
The whole
didn't
thing was
understand
confusion
it.
about yea and nay. Normally
Right.
nay means no and yea and yes means yes, but the way
Well, we voted, what we voted
Right,
on.
and so he could, what he could do is a point of order, is he could make a motion, a recommendation to reconsider the vote that was just taken. And then that motion could come, or what normally what happens is at the next meeting, before the minutes are approved, then the person that voted yes on it can ask for it to be reconsidered, or you can ask for it to be reconsidered now, before the next meeting. And so that's something that you can do, but it has to be somebody that voted. It has to be, like, you would have to make that recommendation because you would have voted.
Well, I would make the recommendation to reconsider.
Well, we have a motion already before us.
Mm-hmm. A motion and a second.
No, we haven't got a second.
Okay.
And-
Esther's
without it-
motion is just, Jules' motion.
Is to accept the change. But if there's no second, it dies, right?
Right, then the
Correct.
recommendation's not made to the city council.
Right.
Right.
So is there a second? So therefore, the recommendation dies for lack of a second. Have we just set a precedence here?
Yeah, no, I'm even confused at this point. Let me just say that.
We had a recommendation to,
That was a new one on there.
Yeah, yes meant no, and no meant yes in that situation. I think that's the way it worked out.
Mr. Savage?
yes,
Under parliamentary law, if the first and the second agree to modify the motion,
Right.
it can be redone.
Right.
That's how simple.
Mm-hmm. That's what I was saying. You can make a motion to reconsider and then re-vote on the first motion because y'all were confused. You can make the motion to reconsider. You can either do it now, here at the meeting, or you can do it prior to the minutes being approved at the next meeting.
but we can reconsider now.
Yes.
All right. But we've just had a motion that's been made and failed for lack of a second, which basically kills it anyway.
Let's just revote on this thing.
No, I think you're gonna need to re-vote.
Yes and no?
Okay.
No, I think you need to.
All right, so but then the person that made the motion, which is Mr. Dixon, and the person that seconded the motion, which would have to agree to reconsider it.
Exactly.
So Mr. Dixon would need to make a motion to reconsider, and Mr. McKenzie would need to second that. Is that how that would go?
Yes. I mean, basically, what is make a motion that, that you not recommend this for passage to the city's council.
Yeah, I'll restate my motion. I don't see that we need to change what we have in C1, so I make a motion we don't.
Reconsider.
First, you gotta make the motion that you reconsider the vote that's already been
I'm
taken.
restating or reconsidering my motion, yeah. I make the motion, we reconsider my motion.
And I second it.
Okay, and just so we're all clear, a yes vote means we proceed with considering the change. A nay vote kills the change.
Well,
Well, that's
the
backwards from-
the reconsideration.
Oh, this is a vote to reconsider.
Whether or not you're gonna reconsider and vote again.
Okay, okay.
Right.
And then we have another motion. Okay, this is just a
Exactly.
motion to reconsider.
Exactly.
All right, we'll get this straight. Okay.
So yes to reconsider.
This is a motion to reconsider. This is,
Sure, we can reconsider. Okay.
Mr. Savage.
yes.
Mr. Green.
Yes.
Mr. McKenzie.
Yes.
Mr. Cobb.
Yes.
Mr. Dixon.
Yes.
Mayor Tibbs.
Yes.
Okay, so we're going to reconsider Mr. Dixon's motion. Does it have to be, the motion have to be remade? Or do we just reopen the existing motion?
No, you're allowing him to amend to reconsider his motion, so he can amend his motion. So,
He can amend it, or
Yes.
he can just state it as it was.
Okay.
And have the secretary read it.
right.
Okay,
I'd just like to restate it.
okay. Motion to, how do we word that?
Restate the motion.
No, this is the motion, the original motion.
She's got it in minutes. right?
Okay. All right, now a nay vote
Second.
is to, you seconded, is to
Strike the motion.
strike the changes.
The change, yeah.
And a yes vote means to can go on and consider the changes.
No, that's backwards.
Backwards, yeah.
That's what confused me the first time.
All right, so let's get it straight then.
Mike, I think it would be helpful if you just state instead of asking her to restate it, I think if you would just state your motion again.
I make a motion that we leave our ordinance as it is.
That you do not recommend approval
Do not
to the city council of any
recommend approval.
changes.
So that would be a yes, would be to support my motion.
Okay.
Second.
Ms. Harris.
Okay.
No.
Mr. Dixon.
Yes.
Mr. Savage.
No.
Mr. Green.
Yes.
Mr. McKenzie.
Yes.
Mr. Cobb.
No.
Mayor Tibbs.
Yes.
Mr. Dixon.
Yes.
What's 4-3 the other way?
You get that?
4 yeses. 4 yeses, I'm sorry.
4 yeses and 3
And 3 noes.
Okay, so the ordinance changes been denied. It will not go before city council. That was painful.
Well, it's like voting a negative.
It was a
Sometimes that can be
yes,
confusing.
no, and a no to me, yes.
Okay, all right. So the first one will go to city council, the second one will not. Okay. Is there any other business? Okay, everybody's got the information items in your packet.
I asked to be heard if I could.
Yes, sir?
I asked to be heard when I started, you said it could have ended. At what point do I get to be heard?
Oh, under other business. Yes, sir.
As of now? All right.
I have to be excused, I have another meeting.
Okay.
I have to be excused.
Yes, me too.
I have another meeting at 6.
This one, take a look.
Okay.
Okay, this is in regards to 83-2012, the moratorium that y'all passed, asked to be passed. City council stated that that this would not become a constraint of trade issue. In my opinion, it has. It's been more than 18 months Nothing's been done. 13 months and it hasn't been spoken about. There's no attempt to even do anything about it. I think the last time it was spoken about was last April. And that's when I provided y'all a map. I believe and on the minutes that are provided, it's like there is no further business. There is no business to conduct this month. This is what the public's being told. I'm asking you, what is your intent? Either please drop the issue or finish it. That's my request. I have another issue. Now ain't the time and place.
Thank you, sir. Any other business? And if there's nothing else, then we will be adjourned.